Hi, Biology. Mr. Wagner here. We're talking about our final section, creation and evolution. So let's jump into the notes. We're going to go through half of them today, and then we have a video assignment for Monday and Tuesday, and then we're going to finish the notes next week, Thursday. All right, so let's jump in. You'll have an assignment for this one and the notes on Thursday as well. Filling out your note packet, please. So make sure your note packet is out and that you can fill that out, and you're going to use that filled out note packet to help you then with the assignment. Okay, what is creation? Move my picture here. So creation is the belief in a biblical account of the start of the universe, world, and all living things. God is the creative force behind all things that are seen and unseen. The creation of all things occurred over a literal 6-day period, and mankind is a special part of the creation created for communion and relationship with God. This is what we believe. This is what we teach at Milwaukee Lutheran High School. This is what the Bible teaches. Okay. All right. So, if indeed you believe as we do, that God created everything, then he is the owner of all things and in charge. Therefore, we're accountable to the rules he has given for our lives. Because of the original sin of Adam and Eve, and sins were committed daily, death, disease, and disorder are prominently found in our world. The only reason that death, disease, and decay and all those things exist is because of sin. We need a Savior from our sins. Luckily, we have one. That Savior is Jesus Christ. Different types of evolution. So here's the other teaching. Creationism is the one teaching that we believe. It's found in the Bible. The other type is evolution. Evolution, a particulate evolution, the creation of all matter and energy. There's also the theory called galactic evolution, the development of the framework in which the stars, planets, and other heavenly bodies could exist. There's something called stellar evolution, the creation of stars and how they essentially turned on to provide light and heat. There's planetary evolution, the formation of planets and moons through the gravitational forces from debris left over from the Big Bang. And then there's chemical evolution, the formation of complex organic molecules from simpler inorganic molecules. And the picture here talks about all these different theories, that this whole thing, they're all connected, all of these different kinds of evolutions, biological and cultural and future evolutions, all of them, from Big Bang to humanity. The era of time from the origin of the universe to the present and beyond spans several different epochs. An epoch is a large period of time throughout all of history. Cosmic evolution is the study of the many varied changes in the assembly and composition of energy, matter, and life in the thinning and cooling universe. The universe is thinning, it's expanding, and it is also cooling. Implications of evolution. What are some of those implications? Well, naturalism is a basis for all evolutionary thought. Naturalism states that everything from stars and planets to all living things have arisen from natural causes and properties. To claim that there is no God and no supernatural events occur. Everything can or will be explained using the scientific method. Naturalism goes hand in hand with the materialism, the idea that only matter and nature actually truly exist. That's naturalism. Big Bang. Few issues with the cosmic evolution. Big Bang states that the universe and all matter was created in an explosion around 14 billion years ago. There is evidence that the universe had a beginning. The Big Bang theory states that the nothingness that was present before the beginning of the universe became so dense that it exploded and created everything. Nothingness cannot become dense. There is no real explanation of what caused the explosion, and the explosions by nature are chaotic, catastrophic. Nowhere in history has there ever been an explosion that created order. It's never happened. In fact, all of evolution goes against some of the basic laws that we have about the universe starting off in a chaotic order and starting off orderly and heading into chaos. It goes against all those. It's not natural. So a few issues also with cosmic evolution. Stellar and planetary evolution states the stars and planets were created by dust and debris from the Big Bang that gathered in space. Space is a vacuum. If something explodes in a vacuum, the particles continue outward forever. There would be no force to gather the debris into stars and planets. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. Does not work that way. All right. So here's a chart talking about some different topics. Age of the universe. According to creation, it's about 6,000 years old. According to evolution, it's billions of years. What was the original status? According to creation in the Bible, everything was perfect. According to evolution, everything was chaotic. The progressing status. According to creation, we're going from perfect, we're declining because of sin. Evolution teaches the exact opposite, that things are starting off simple and they're becoming more and more complex, which again goes against laws of thermodynamics. Cause of death. Cause of death is sin, the gateway to eternity. Death is simply the gateway to eternity. Evolution, it's unexplained. There is no explanation. What about order in the universe? Creation says that it's devolving, it's declining. It's going from a state of order to a state of disorder. Evolution says the opposite. Evolution says that things are getting more and more complex. I think you need to fill that chart out, or parts of that chart. All right, what is biological evolution? Biological evolution is the change of gene frequency in a population of organisms over time. It's the change in gene frequency in population of organisms over time. What that means, I start out with 80% green genes and 20% brown. After a year, I'm going to get 60% green genes and 40% brown. Why? Because that's what's going to happen after we reproduce. We have evidence that gene frequency does change over time. Yes, we're agreeing with that. We're 100% in agreement with that. There are changes in finch beak shapes over time. There are changes in dog breed size and shape and color, etc. over time. We totally agree with that. That is called microevolution. The fact that things change over time. Microevolution, that's natural adaptation. That is true. We believe with that. Microevolution can and does happen. Living things can change over time due to pressure put on them by their environment, through selective breeding and through genetic engineering. Microevolution explains how the diversity of life on Earth today could have arisen from the animals Noah brought on the ark. Microevolution is possible because of the inherited genetic variations within a species. And yes, microevolution is observable and quantifiable. We can record that data. Everyone agrees, yes, this can happen. This does happen. Here's where the problem comes in. Now, macroevolution. This is the Darwinian theory that goes from molecules to man. This is false. Macroevolution does not happen. This is where we disagree. All living things evolve from a common ancestor and are therefore all related. That's the teaching. It's false. This common ancestor initially came from non-living material. So in other words, abiogenesis, life out of nothing. Positive mutations and changes to the genetic code of a species allow organisms to gain new information into their genome. Macroevolution is not observable due to the time scale involved. In other words, since it takes billions of years, no one can observe it. We can't prove it, and we would say that it is false. Macroevolution states that single-celled organisms became multi-celled organisms. Fish evolved from amphibians, amphibians evolved into reptiles, reptiles evolved into birds and mammals, and human evolved from an ape-like ancestor. Common ancestor. Again, this is false teaching. This is evolution. Where did the idea of evolution come from? The idea of evolution has been around for a long time. Evolution began to gain more traction through the work done by Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. Lamarck was a French naturalist who theorized that environmental pressure could change animals over time. He felt that the use or disuse of certain organs or body parts for survival would either increase or decrease their prominence on the animal's body. Examples: giraffes had long necks because they would stretch to reach leaves and trees. Over the years, the stretching to get leaves elongated the giraffes' necks. That kind of makes sense. Okay, again, that's still within a species. That doesn't mean that giraffes changed into different species. That's where we have our issue. The concept of evolution really took off with the work of British naturalist Charles Darwin. He wrote a book called On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or The Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. That was the title of the book. Instead of evolution occurring because of use or non-use of organs, Darwin posed the idea of evolution by means of natural selection. His work was based on a 5-year voyage upon the HMS, that's Her Majesty's ship, that's what they named them in England and Britain, the Beagle, to the Galapagos Islands. And here are the Galapagos Islands. So you can see what we're talking about. There's the big map with South America, and the Galapagos Islands are off of Ecuador, and this is what they look like. Charles Darwin made some excellent observations on the different types of finches found on the Galapagos Islands. Different species of finches had different shaped beaks depending on what type of food they ate. Darwin theorized that these different finches may have evolved from a common ancestor that he would simply call a finch. Okay? We have no problem with that. Again, we're talking still microevolution, that within a species things can change, and we would agree with that. Darwin described the mechanism behind this change as natural selection. Birds with the appropriate shaped beaks for food and its environment would survive and reproduce. Birds that didn't have that beak or shape would die. Over time, this would change how that population of bird looks. Darwin assumed that if you could apply this idea of adaptation to a grand scale, he theorized that all living things evolved through the natural selection from a common ancestor. From a common ancestor. From a common ancestor. What observable science tells us, a review. There is genetic diversity in all species. Example, the tallest person in modern history was 8'11". The shortest person in modern history was 21 inches and 21 and a half inches. Natural selection does occur. This is often referred to as survival of the fittest. As an organism has a trait that helps it to survive, it will reproduce, and the chances are that trait will be passed on to the next generation. Microevolution, adaptation, is observable. We see this in different breeds of dogs, different varieties of fruits and vegetables, and the differences in beaks of finches and much more. That last part is beaks of finches and much more. So we're agreeing. What we don't see in observable science, life has never been observed to come from non-living material. Abiogenesis, that's literally life from nothing, has never been observed in nature or recreated in the lab. There's no known observable process by which new genetic information can be added to an organism's genetic code. So in other words, Darwin said that animals had a common ancestor, but we don't see that. There is no known observable process by which genetic information can be added to an organism's genetic code. Organisms cannot change from one form to the next. I cannot have a fish turn into an amphibian. That's what evolution teaches. Or that they had a common ancestor at one point. They can only adapt based on the genetic information already present in their genomes. Mutations don't do it. Mutations only mix up genetic information that is already there. There are no known or observable mutations which add new information to the genome. Organisms lose genetic information over time. That is called entropy. In fact, that is the second law of thermodynamics, entropy. Things get lost, they don't get found. They don't gain it. So if I have an organism, the possibility is that it could lose something, but it's not just going to all of a sudden pick up the ability to fly. It doesn't work that way. We don't see this transitional forms in the fossil records that would be expected if all living species evolved from the same common ancestor. We find lots of apes and we find lots of humans, but we don't find lots of transitional forms. And supposedly there should be billions of these transitional forms, but we don't see them. And the reason we don't see them is because there weren't any, because they're not there and they never existed. If macroevolution, that's molecules to man, is true, there should be plenty of transitional forms in the fossil record. An example of a transitional form would be the fossil of a fish somewhere in between the fish stage and the amphibian stage. If we don't see these missing links in the fossil record. Therefore, missing transitional forms is a key point on why we believe that there are no transitional forms. Missing links. Unusual extinct animals have often been passed off as traditional forms. One of them was the coelacanth. It's an unusual 6-foot-long fish. The fins are attached to the body by thick, fleshy lobes. Thought to be the ancestor of the first amphibians. People said, aha, a fish with big, fleshy fins and lobes. That must have then developed into legs. As fish crawled out of the water and got onto the sand, those fins then developed into legs. When a live coelacanth was caught in the Indian Ocean, it was very deep water, and the theory was no longer valid. And that's a picture of the coelacanth, or coelacanth. It's pronounced different ways. Notice that the fin up in front is kind of like a foot. There's the Archaeopteryx, a fossil bird that is often represented as a link between reptiles and birds. Has the modern flight feathers and hollow bones. However, it also had a small breastbone. It had teeth, elongated tail, and claws on its wings. That's what it looks like, supposedly, the Archaeopteryx. Tooth beak, reptilian characteristic. Wing claw, reptilian characteristic. Long tail with many feathers, reptilian characteristic. Foiled wing with contour feathers, avian characteristics. Again, that does not work out. In an attempt to prove molecules to man theory, many frauds and fictions have been created. Embryonic recapitulation, the idea that an unborn baby goes through various stages of development that resemble other animals, evolutions in the womb. This was put together by Ernst Haeckel, deliberately falsified his research in pictures, and he published of certain embryos. The findings were published in 1868. They are found to be false 6 years later. However, these false things that were proven to be wrong still appear in textbooks today, proving, supposedly, evolution. It's absolutely terrible. It would be like taking a picture that's a lie and still using it today to prove something that is a lie. This is Haeckel's drawings. He said, look at the fish at the top, and the salamander, the tortoise, the chicken, pig, cow, rabbit, and human. Look how they all look the same. And look how when they're developing, they have same kind of developmental structures. Must have had similar ancestry. No, they don't. Those pictures are wrong and false. They are not correct. And yet they still appear today to try to prove something to us. That is not what the human embryo looks like. These are lies. These are pictures that are not correct. Here's actually some more ideas of what it is. So lamprey, dogfish, the har, the snake, chicken, possum, cat, bat, and human. Again, these are not the correct pictures. But they want to prove to you somehow, look, they're all the same. Cambrian explosion. All major animal phyla, remember it's kingdom, phyla, class, order, so phyla, occurred at once in the fossil record, almost as if they were created at all about the same time. Funny, that seems to match up with the account we have in creation of God creating all things. But, of course, they say that's not true. Macroevolutionists explain this away by saying that evolution occurred much faster during this period, and therefore we don't have the evidence of the slow changes that brought about these animal types. How convenient for them. Macroevolutionists state that the geologic column is evidence of evolution. The geologic column is the idea that more primitive animal fossils are found lower in the animal fossil record, while more modern animals are found higher in the fossil record. So imagine this is like a big chunk of earth that we just went in and grabbed and pulled out, and this is earth. And the stuff that's the oldest on the bottom, that would be Precambrian and Cambrian periods, and then all the periods is all this earth packed on top. Science that isn't, the geologic column. So the geologic column exists nowhere in the world except in textbooks and the imagination. You cannot go anywhere and actually dig down and grab a bunch of earth and have it fill out this way. Nowhere in the world can you dig a hole and find this representation. Another problem, fossils are aged by rock layers, and rock layers are aged by the fossils that are in them. This is circular reasoning. Well, how do we know that fossil is 1 million years old? Well, because the rock it's in is 1 million years old. And how did you prove the rock was 1 million years old? I did it because the fossils that are in it are 1 million years old. It's circular reasoning. It's an argument that's based on the very assumption that it attempts to prove. You cannot have circular reasoning. It doesn't work. Science that isn't. Let's talk about hominid fossils. These are fossils of supposedly human people. These are the missing links, supposedly. Eoanthropus, his fancy name. Other name is Piltdown Man. Fragments, bones of a human-like skull and an ape-like jaw found between 1908 and 1911. This was a hoax of someone who tampered with some bones and left them to be easily found. This is not real science. This is what it looked like. What about this Hesperopithecus? Nebraska man. A man reconstructed from supposedly a single tooth in Nebraska, found in 1922. The tooth was found to have come from, guess what? An extinct pig. So they found this tooth and they said, hey, based upon this tooth, let's build this thing all around it. They made up all this stuff all around it. They say, look, here's one of the missing links. Turns out the tooth was actually a pig tooth. That's what they put together, saying this is our ancestor. This is this halfway between monkey and man person. Reconstruction based on a single tooth. They put all this together. Later excavations revealed the tooth belonged to a peccary, a close relative of the pig. What about Ramapithecus, Rama's ape? A medium-sized ape that was reconstructed from a few teeth, that's all they had, a heavy jawbone, and the fragment of a facial bone. These bones were assembled incorrectly to show that it looked like a human. No leg or hip bones were ever found. So obviously if you have parts and you put them together wrongly, you can make it look any way you want. So here is Ramapithecus in the top left, and they put it together, slanted together, so it looks like Ramapithecus that you see at the bottom. And they said, look how close that is to an ape's jaw. Okay? Well, if you assemble the thing correctly, it actually looks more like a man's jaw. It is not a difference between an ape and a man. It doesn't work that way. What about Australopithecus? That's the southern ape. A skull found that was later found to be juvenile. In the early 1970s, it was dismissed as an extinct ape. Australopithecus africanus, afarensis, Lucy, had long toes that were used for grasping and a chimp-like skull. Again, it is an ape, not a human, not a cross. So they wanted to stand upright, and they make it look that way based upon the skeletal structure. Based upon these skeletons, this is what they think she's going to look like, Lucy. And again, it was found to be incorrect.
So you got the pictures? The features on one side have the orientation of the iliac blades. Now, what are the evolutionists going to do about that? You're not going to believe this. Nova, have you heard Nova? There was a PBS Nova series in which Dr. Ellen Lovejoy, a very distinguished, famous paleoanthropologist, was involved. And he's looking at Lucy's skeleton here, and he's lamenting the fact that the hips are all wrong. They're supposed to be human-like hips, so you can walk the way the mechanical footprints show out. But they don't look like human hips, they look like ape hips. What to do about this? Watch it now. The ape stood up. It was a revolutionary idea. We didn't really enjoy his expertise today, because the evidence was quite overwhelming. We didn't look human, because everybody didn't. Superficially, they represented a chimpanzee, which was the only thing that could possibly look like a modern human. But Lovejoy noticed something odd about the mandibles and the fossilized. When I put the two parts of the bones together to be that, this part of the bones is pressed so hard and so completely into this one that it It was a tricky job. Like a three-dimensional jigsaw. This is what they say. You can teach this in the public schools, but they don't criticize it because of the So, well, I think perhaps the best way to.
All right. Let's back up. The fact that interior parts, I think we skipped this one. The pelvis of Lucy. Mark resembled this. Lucy to the chimpanzee is equally obvious. It suggests to us that the mechanism of lateral pelvic balance during bipedalism was closer to that in apes than in humans. So in other words, what he's trying to say is they had to reconfigure the part because it didn't work into their theory. And so they had to saw it off and chop it up so that they could finally say, look, evolution works. When you take the actual hip that was found, and guess what? It fits perfectly into an ape. Why? Because Lucy was never a humanoid ape. Lucy was an ape the entire time. Homo habilis, handyman. Actually a mixture of ape and human fossils found at different locations. They found some human locations in one plot. They found over in another spot, they found some apes. And guess what? They said they're close enough, miles away, that yes, we can actually put them together and this must be the same thing. Therefore, it's half ape, half human. Again, not real science, junk science. This is the picture they drew from it, even though the parts were found in different locations. What about Homo erectus, upright man, also called Java man? It was a skull cap and a femur found 50 feet apart. A human skull was found in the same rock layer. So therefore they said, oh, see, there it is. That's him. Other fossils classified as Homo erectus are found in Africa and Asia and are fully human. Homo erectus pekinensis, Peking man, was a fossil that was lost in World War II, but were very similar to Homo erectus, recently changed the name, and they are fully human. So again, if we had this millions of years of transition where eventually with this common ancestor, apes and a common ancestor in humans, where are all these records? We can't find any of them. There's none, not a single one. And the simple answer is why? Because they don't exist. Evolution is not real. It never happened that way. It happened according to creation. What about Homo neanderthalensis? That's Neanderthal man. Fossils that had ape-like features that were found in Western Europe. They were fully human and were bigger and stronger than today's human. What does that tell us? That the humans in the past, bigger and stronger, that humans are declining. Okay, what does the Bible teach? Humans are in a state of decline. What does evolution teach? No, it's the opposite. Everything's getting stronger and bigger and better. So which one does it fit into? This fits into the idea of creation, not into the idea of evolution. And that's the picture that they wanted to draw of him. They wanted to make him look kind of like an ape, but kind of a human all at the same time. And finally, Cro-Magnon man, discovered in France in 1868. Evolutionists now admit that they were identical to modern humans. And there he is. So again, here's all of these pictures, and all of them are frauds. All of them are either fully human or feral pig or full ape. There's nothing that's halfway in between them. They are all frauds. Science that isn't hominid fossils. Most important differences between humans and apes is that man is created in the image of God. There is controversy in the evolutionary community about the different ancestry of humans. However, from a biblical perspective, man has always been man, and the missing links are always either fully ape or fully human. That's all they are. They're either fully ape or fully human. There is no evidence ever found for anything to be a mix. All right, this is our first section of notes. Make sure you got your notes all filled in. You're going to use those to answer the assignment that we have for today, the assignment. And then next week we got a video and then more notes on Thursday. All right, take care, God bless, and have a great day, everybody.